Hey, welcome back to Bridal Sewing Techniques, and today we're going to talk about how to make and add lace illusion sleeves to a wedding gown. Are you someone who has experience with a mix of sewing but is looking to get into the bridal sewing niche? This channel is for you. Hit subscribe to become a part of the community. That's right. After watching this video and having a little trial and error and practice, when someone contacts you and says, "Can you add lace illusion sleeves to my wedding gown?" most of the time you'll be able to say, "Sure." So first off, I'm going to share with you the information of where I get my measuring guide from, so that if you want to learn to make a pattern for making these sleeves, we're going to teach you all about that. I'm going to talk about this favorite book and the depth of information that it gives you for this project. We're going to show you how to put the sleeve onto the dress and go over the process for how we alter it and how we fit it to the bride. Then I'm going to show you how to get the lace applique onto the sleeves. This includes picking out the applique that's going to look best for the sleeves, how to actually sew them on. And finally, I'm also going to show you a second method because, as you guys know, I'm not all into everybody doing things one way. This is another method of making a sleeve that does not require any type of pattern making skills at all. So it is a cheater method and it is super easy and delivers great results. I've used it many, many times. So that will be toward the end of this video. So basically, I'm working here with some muslin fabric and I'm laying out the full length of the sleeve that we're going to end up needing. And you can see the tulle illusion fabric that we have right above this muslin. I would personally prefer to use a power mesh for this, but the bride loved how see-through the tulle was, and I did warn her about, the power mesh would be much more durable than the tulle, but she's definitely choosing beauty over function on this one. So she really wants illusion sleeves. She wants them to be almost invisible. So that's what we're doing. Well, I've got this long ruler with you can't really see it in the video here. It's got kind of like a T-square end on it, so that I know that my line is straight here against the table. There you can kind of see a peek of it. And I'm going to draw the line right down the center of the sleeve. Now, I am not a pattern maker. What I do for a living is basically I do alterations. That little book over there to the left, I'm going to give you some details on it in a bit, show you how I got the numbers that I'm working with for drawing this out, all that stuff. I use this book when it comes to drawing up a pattern for sleeves because, like I said, I'm not a pattern maker. I'm sure that I will do some things that some of you pattern makers that follow me, it'll make your blood run cold. I'm sure I'm going to do something terrible, okay? But I just try to get it about right and then I alter it to fit. So here's the measurements that I took from the bride. And again, we'll go into detail about how the book shows me how to measure this, okay? So I'm not going to leave you hanging. But I'm going to take all of these measurements that are doing like the circumference of her arm, and I'm going to divide them by 2 so that way I know how far out I'm measuring from that center line that I just drew. And then I'm going to add 0.25. The reason why I'm going to do that is if you take that measurement of her arm, half it, add 0.25, you're really adding a ½ inch ease to the full measurement of her arm. Now, if this were going to be a woven fabric, I would need to do more like, 1.5 or something like that and then adjust. But this is a tulle, and the way that I'm cutting it, it's going to have some stretch to it. And it's going to have a very small seam allowance. and I'm using muslin to make my pattern because I like to be able to fold this up and put it in a Ziploc bag. So no, I don't use the pattern paper like a lot of people do. I'm sure there's reasons why I should not be doing this. Like I said, some of you guys are going to be after me. You'll be in the streets with torches and chanting and all this stuff, okay? But this has worked for me for so many years. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing, right? So hopefully this will work for you. And I just love the way that I can store this pattern folded up. Obviously, I'm speeding through this right now. I've got this video on 4 times speed, I think. And I'm trying to edit out things for brevity's sake. Let me know in the comments if you guys would like to see the full thing. My footage is actually over 2 hours of footage on here. And if you want me to throw that in my file folder of future long form videos that I'll offer as digital downloads on my website, let me know if you guys are interested in this one. Just being able to see every little nitty gritty detail. I would be happy to share this with you guys. Now I am zooming in and I'm going to show you how we do the top of the sleeve. And again, I'm going by the information in this book, and I'm going to link to this book in the description below and then show you more details about it later on in the video. But basically you draw these points across this top part of the sleeve, and it shows you how to draw the swoops for your sleeve cap. I call them swoops. They're swooping. Are they not swooping? So some of the swoops on the front look different from the swoops on the back. And it shows you how to get the front and the back of the sleeve the right way. So, and it breaks it up into these little segments. So here I'm drawing one line and another. These points are all equidistant across the sleeve there. And again, I'm going to draw these lines. I'm just making sure they go up above that triangle line. I just drew a triangle from the little armpit points up to the top of the shoulder. I drew those straight lines to form a triangle. And then I drew these points. And I'm labeling this for the front of the sleeve, or the front of the arm and the back of the arm. So each of these equidistant points are labeled A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So you can see B, you drop it 3/4 of an inch. C, you raise it 3/4 of an inch, and so on. So I'm going to follow the directions on that. Drop it 3/4, raise it 3/4. The top point is right where it is. And then the next one, you're going to raise it 3/4. And then for F, it's going to be right on that line. And G is the original point also. So again, if you get this book, it'll make sense. I just can't in a video go through so much detail that I explain the whole book. But hopefully you can see how this swoop is shaped while I'm sketching on this. It's a lovely little swoop, don't you think? So that's your front and your back of your sleeve. Because as you know, the shoulder is set kind of forward on the body. It's not set square on the side of the body. And so your sleeve needs to represent that. You need to have a little bit more fabric to work with at the back than you do the front. You don't want to bubble in the front at the front of the armpit. And this bride does want this sleeve to be very tight as she wears it. She wants it pretty much skin tight. So we're going to honor that with all these measurements too. So if you were doing something like a satin sleeve that has a lot more wearing ease, obviously you're going to make your sleeve, you're going to build in a lot of extra ease with your measurements compared to what I'm doing. So now I'm starting to cut this out. Exciting things are happening. We're going to cut out this muslin pattern, and then we're going to work on the extensions from the strap that originally came on the dress. You've got to do something to get from the strap to the top of the shoulder, okay? You got to do something to fill it in. You can't just make a sleeve go all the way in and attach to a strap. That's how you get something that looks terrible. So we're going to have to work on that little bit of extension that she's going to need from the strap to the sleeve. That'll be our next step with this. Now, there are 3 different ways that I personally go about generating these shapes for that part of what we need to cut out. One is you can just measure her and generate an entire front and back to a shirt with this book and the measurements that it gives you, and then you just cut off the part that you need from the strap out. The second way that you can do it, and that I do very often, is just kind of a draping technique on the bride. As she stands in the dress, you lay the fabric over her shoulder and you trace out what you're going to cut out to get from the strap to the sleeve. The third technique is going to be kind of encapsulated in the other method that appears at the end of this video, that doesn't require any type of pattern making or draping or measuring at all. So you'll see that other method at the end. So you're definitely going to want to watch this all the way to the end and pick which way suits you the best, because as you guys know, we all think differently. And I'm not into just showing one way of doing things, because chances are you're going to really connect with one way, and then the other ways are going to seem a little fuzzy or not exactly applicable for your situation. So this is my beloved copy that I showed to you guys earlier. You can see I've got all my little post-it notes in here. And I wish I knew how old this copy is. The most recent printing listed here is 1992. I know I haven't had it that long. The pages are a little darker or whatever. Well, anyways, I reached out when I was making this video. I reached out to Mr. McCunn and made sure it was okay that I showed his book in the video, and you know what kind of limitations and rights and whatever did he want. You know, I didn't want to show stuff. This is copyrighted if he didn't want to share that on a video. And of course this channel is monetized. I don't really make anything. Pretty much if I make anything off of ad revenue at this point anyways, I donate it to charity. So anyways, I reached out to him and he was so kind, guys. It was super exciting. So look what arrived in my mailbox. So there you can see the color difference of how yellow mine is compared to this second edition. And he's dropped the Donald and he's now Don. So yeah, so this is his more recent one. So anyways, what I wanted to show you is the sleeve. Okay, so this still gives you the formula for the measurements for the sleeve. These are the measurements, and then how you draw your pattern out and make the sleeve cap. And please excuse all the background fuzz that I had in that audio. I recorded that live while I was flipping through the book. But right now, I'm just going to scan over the pages real quickly so you can get an up-close idea of what all is contained in this very helpful book. So he also sent me this. So thank you so much, Mr. McCunn, for sharing all of this stuff with us. I appreciate it so much. Guys, he has helped me so much over the years with all of his information in his books. Yay! Back to the fun part, back to sewing. So now that we have this tulle cut out, we're going to go ahead and sew the tulle pieces that we just cut out to the gown. We're not going to put any lace on them yet. We're going to sew the extension that goes from the strap to form the arm's eye and the new sleeve to that. I am putting them on pretty much wrong side out. If you're familiar with French seams, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not familiar with French seams, you're going to want to go watch my video on how to make French seams. But basically, you would first sew it all on wrong side out, the seam allowances out. And then that's going to make it easier anyways for you to adjust the fit, because you're going to have the bride try it on. You're going to adjust the fit of all these pieces. And then to finish off the French seams, you just cut very, very close to the seams that you just made, turn it wrong side out, and then sew it again, enclosing that very tiny seam allowance on the inside. That's called a French seam. So you have a very neat seam on the outside, and then on the inside you have an enclosed seam that is double strong because it's 2 seams wide, but it's also very narrow. So that's the way this is going to be put together. But during the whole fitting process, we don't want to have to deal with the lace. So we're only doing the tulle right now. Try it on with the tulle, adjust it tulle only, put it back on her, tulle only, make sure it fits right, and then the next step is going to be me showing you how to pick out your lace pattern, put it on there, try it on her, and then do the applique stitch to applique it down. Here we go. All right, so she's trying this on, and as you can see, there's some places that need adjustment. This part of the try-on process is going to require some conversation. This bride wants her sleeve way up in her underarm area. She does not want baggy underarms, but she wants as much range of motion as possible, and she does not mind it tight under her arms. So that's why you could see in that video clip, this sleeve is really up in her business, but she is happy with that. So some girls would want a little bit more breathing room, so to speak, in the sleeve. I know I would, but she tolerated it really well. So now that I made that adjustment to the top of the shoulder, you could tell there was a little bit of extra space in there. I'm going back through and I am trimming any little bit of seam allowance, and then now I'm snipping. You want lots of little snips in there, in that curve, so that when you go back through and flip it and do your French seam, the fabric is not going to be pulling on itself from the inside. So here goes that second pass of sewing to create that very neat and beautiful French seam. And I will show you in the end how this looks on the inside. It is just neat as a pin. I'm also boosting the contrast on this so you can hopefully see really well. As you can tell throughout this video, I am messing with the video speeds. I did not want to be trying to drop an hour-long video for you guys. I think you guys get the idea from the faster video clips. If you need to adjust the speed, just go to settings here in YouTube and you can adjust the speed of each of the videos at any point, so you can watch it faster or slower. Now, one thing to keep in mind also is, and here I'm snipping again, one thing to keep in mind is the stretch of the fabric. This tulle has quite a bit of stretch. So if you were making a sleeve out of a very stiff kind of satin or taffeta that didn't have much give to it, you would have to give her more wearing ease. So as you know, we'll have to keep all this in mind, the personality of the fabric. So be careful. When I was making that pattern, I was using muslin, which does not stretch, and we're using tulle that does stretch. So it's very important when you jump from fabric to fabric like that, you think ahead, and then also you have plenty of try-ons for the bride to test out the range of motion. So now I am finishing up the French seams also on the sleeve. How pretty. And we have not even added the lace yet. So this is going to give her plenty of range of motion and still be quite pretty against her skin. So one of my favorite parts about dealing with lace and appliques is picking out the patterns that I want to use. So this to me really looks like the lower arm and cuff area of the sleeve. So I'm just going to cut around this very beautiful lace. Now, the way that she got the perfectly matched lace is she ordered this lace through the manufacturer, through the bridal shop that she purchased her gown from. That's really the best way to get the exact stuff. Then what I'm cutting out now is going to be the upper shoulders, the upper arms of the gown. And this is a good, thick, sturdy lace. It's so beautiful. And my favorite part of the lace is it actually has some hibiscus flowers in it. So it has a lovely tropical look to it. So now you can see where I put each of these pieces. So I am laying one sleeve over the other. I've placed it kind of how I like on one sleeve. I laid the other sleeve over it, and I'm positioning them to make sure that they are perfect mirrors. Now we will have to adjust these arms independently while the bride's arm is in it. As you guys know, if you've dealt with alterations very much, one arm may be longer than another or built up more or whatever. But we're going to start with a perfect mirror. And then when she tries it on, we're going to snip the lace where needed so that we can introduce some curves, like going up on the shoulder. We need some curves. And then also to fit this to her, to each arm to where the fit is perfect, but then when you look at her straight on, it looks as mirrored as possible. So I'm getting this to lay nice and flat down the length of the arm and just truing it up, just laying them against each other over and over to make sure they line up perfectly. I'm pulling on it and everything and making sure that it's laying straight when it's stressed a little bit. There's where I'm going to put a little snip to put a contour. That leaf is just going to fold over beautifully on her shoulder. That's going to be pinned down. And here's a little high contrast black and white so you can see what I'm doing. Later we can go in and cover those seams that are there extending from the original dress up to the arm's eye. We can cover those seams with some more lace pieces as needed. Now I'm going to open up the arm seam that runs up the length of the arm. I'm going to open that up so that I can lay this tulle out flat and do the lace applique work with my sleeve flat. I would never try to tunnel up in a sleeve and sew all of this lace down. You can kind of do that if it's just a little piece of a lace that needs to be sewn down. It may be worth it, but most of the time it's going to be worth taking just a few minutes to open the sleeve up and then re-sew it. So here I'm going to do an applique slit stitch. For those of you who quilt, you're going to be reminded more of like a free motion stitch. So what I'm doing is I'm dropping the feed dogs by using my right leg. I'm pressing out on the thigh lift that I have. I've got the little thigh paddle under there. You can't see it. But when I do that, it's raising the presser foot and dropping the feed dogs. And I'm able to freely, you can see how I'm kind of moving this around underneath the needle. So the only tension on the thread is what's coming from the two little tension discs that's on top of the machine. that the thread comes through before it goes through all that circuitry. You know how you just loop it up and down and around. Before it goes to all that, it goes through these little tiny tension discs. So that's all that's holding that and keeping the thread from going crazy. I'm speeding it up here a little bit for you to see. Every 6 inches or so, I stop and I do let my feed dog down and sometimes do a little back stitch to reintroduce some tighter tension to it so that it's not floating too much. Now, when I do this applique stitch, I always use a size 18 needle. I find that the larger needle hole will prevent the thread breakage. Now I am putting some buttons on here. There's 2 different ways that I do this. Sometimes they are faux, and that's what this is. I'm sewing them on, but they're not actually functional. This girl is able to just slip her hands right through this sleeve and get in and out without having to open it up. So it's not so awfully tight that she needs functional buttons. But sometimes we do need functional buttons, and then if we needed that, I would put a little strip of the button looping, the elastic button looping on one side and then the buttons on the other. But we're just going to sew these down to the seam, and I always knot between each button. And now I'm going to work on contouring this lace. I sewed it just as it was pinned, and I tried it on her. When I try it on her, I make sure she knows the lace is going to look a little lumpy. It hasn't been pressed down. We're just looking for a kind of a technical accuracy, but nothing beautiful yet. And look how tiny she is. My little sleeve roll won't even fit there in her cuff. This girl is no bigger than a minute, I tell you. So I'm using this, instead of a tailor's ham, it's a little sleeve roll that they make that's nice and dense. And we're going to press all this and make it round. So now you get to see the inside. Isn't that beautiful? It's quite neat and lovely. And it's got a nice little bit of body to it. Now we did still, because this is such an open back and a wide open front too, we did have to put a clear shoulder strap going from shoulder to shoulder in the back to help stabilize and keep the sleeves up on her. But this is what the finished product looks like. It's a showstopper, let me tell you. This dress is just gorgeous with sleeves. And in that last black and white picture, you can see where that clear shoulder strap is going across. It's just a matte finish shoulder strap that we attach with hooks and loops so that she can remove it to get in and out of the dress easily. I will link down below where you can get those straps, and then I'll also add that to the products page of my website. They are so helpful right now with all these open backed gowns that we have. All right, so let's move on to the second segment of this. This is for when you just don't feel like taking out that measuring tape, or maybe you don't feel like you want to learn to do patterns, or maybe you're just not quite ready for that. Someday you want to, but you need a little cheater method here. This is it. So what you're going to do is have the bride bring a skin tight shirt. It can have a little stretch to it, but you don't want it to have a lot of stretch to it, because chances are the fabric that you're going to be making her sleeves out of are probably not going to have an incredible amount of stretch to it. So she's going to put this shirt on under her gown where you can clearly see the shape of that extension piece that you're going to need, and then plus the sleeves. Make sure that this is an inexpensive shirt that she does not mind sacrificing to the effort, because she's not going to be able to use the shirt again afterwards. So here's my little sketch. She's going to put the shirt on. Then she's going to put her dress on over the shirt, and then those red dots along the top of the bodice is where you're going to mark that shirt. so that when she takes it off, you know where the dress begins. So you're going to lay the shirt out, and you see where those marks are. You're going to take the shirt apart completely, and then you're even going to cut away where those marks were, as far as where the new top is going to attach to the bodice. Make sure you leave plenty of seam allowance in there for you to attach this shirt to the edge of the gown. And I drew the seam allowance in red. You can see where I put the extra space. So now you're going to use this explosion chart of sorts to be your pattern for your new top that you are building for this gown, so that you can make the sleeves. So you're going to lay these out just like I laid out the muslin for the previous project. You're going to lay these out on your fabric, cut them out. If your fabric has less stretch than the shirt that she brought, you're going to have to cut out a little ways away from your pattern, so that you're cutting out a little bit bigger pieces. Again, like I said before, I don't go for 100% accuracy on this. I don't go into calculating and all that to make sure the stretch is right and everything, because I mostly do alterations. So I'm going to cut it out, make sure it's kind of right, get it on her, and then adjust. That's my goal. Now you can use this new top with sleeves. You can use it on a completely strapless gown that's a sweetheart, and you can see where I've marked in red where you would hand stitch this new topper inside the gown. And then you could also use it on a gown kind of like what I used for my first project. It can be a gown that already has straps, but you just need the extenders to the armscye and the sleeves, and then you can see where you would attach it to the gown. Here's a very detailed sketch of several places that I would attach a topper. And just for continuity's sake with this project, I ran the new top completely under the decorative bodice that's already, the neckline and all that, that's already on this gown. So everywhere that you see this white undershirt is where we put the new topper. And so we attached it with hand stitching all along the original edge of the bodice of the original gown. And then I also am sewing it down on the inside of the dress. I'm tacking it together. I usually sew this, I hand sew it. I didn't draw this on this sketch, but I hand sew it along the very edge of the bodice of the original gown. And then I drop down another inch or so and tack down that seam allowance or the extra fabric of the piece that you're adding to it, just so you don't ever have that piece flip up and show. Because as you know, a lot of times we're dealing with sheer fabrics, and you also don't want, weird places of bulk under there, that kind of thing. And then also, if you hand stitch it twice, it's stronger. So you can see how this is going to provide that extension piece for you, and also the sleeve without very much pattern making or measuring kind of experience. As you can see, this would be very plain looking. So you would want to go back in just like I did on the first project and applique some lace. Hopefully you'll pick out something that looks a little prettier than this. I just doodled a little bit on the computer, but you get the idea. As you guys know, I've been working on this video for months. I worked on it all summer, and here it is fall now. So I did not wait around for the final pictures of the second project. This bride is still not even married as of the point of this video. As of the date of publishing this video. So I'm just going to show you the before and after of the first project. This bride is happily married. I still keep her anonymous, of course, but here's her very lovely, lovely sleeves, and full functioning sleeves, as functioning as they can be, of course, with such an open bodice and back. But I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. I know what you're looking for. You've been sewing for years, but you want to get into full-time bridal sewing. But there's something missing. You're missing the backroom secrets, the industry tips and tricks. The tools, the sources, the techniques that give you the speed and the accuracy that the industry demands. You have found it.